Bryce Silverness, and for my PC hardware portfolio project, I am going to give you a brief introduction and installation video of a computer power supply. Now this is the main unit of a power supply. It is what takes the alternating current from your house's electricity and converts it into a direct current, which is required for a computer to run. On the outside of the power supply, the side that you would see on the back end of your computer, is a lot of ventilation ports, an on-off switch, and the plug where you would put the cable that would go into your wall outlet. On the underside of the power supply is the cooling fan, and on the back side of the power supply is where all the cables would come out that would power the computer's components. The most important connector for the computer is the motherboard power cable. This is a 20 or 24 pin cable that powers the motherboard and all the components attached to it, with the exception of a high-end discrete graphics card. This is the CPU power cable, which is normally plugged into the top end of the motherboard, which is closer to the CPU itself. This provides any of the extra power that the CPU needs. You would see these normally in a 4-pin connector. This model does have it in an 8-pin connector, as it provides extra power for a CPU that a user would want to overclock, which does consume more power that the CPU would need. In this case, this is a model that is a modular power supply, so all of the extra cables that would power any other components in the computer are an option to plug in. So what this does is this reduces any unneeded cables in the computer, ultimately increasing airflow and generally making a better looking computer overall. Some of the common cables that you would see on a computer power supply is the peripheral ones. So these are ones that are normally designed for legacy devices. These peripheral power connectors you normally see on an old IDE CD drive or hard drive, as well as this 4-pin smaller connector, which is designed to power your basic floppy drive. For most expansion devices today, you would see a SATA power connector. So this would power your CD drive, your hard drive, any other expansion device that requires power of any sort for the modern computer age. This is very similar to the actual SATA data cable port, with the exception of it being a little bit longer than the data cable port itself. And for gaming enthusiasts out there, this is a very essential port that a power supply needs to have if you want to upgrade or install very high-end discrete graphics cards. These are PCI Express power cables. So for this power supply, one of these cables expands into 2 separate 8-pin connectors. These are designed for very high-end graphics cards that are very power hungry, and a power supply can come with many of these cables for the user that wants to install 2 or more high-end graphics cards. And it is very important that not only you have the power supply that has the right amount of cables, but as well as the right amount of wattage. So this power supply is a 750 watt power supply, which is good for about 1 high-end graphics card or 2 mid-range graphics cards. It is recommended that you would have a 1000 watt power supply if you wanted to have 2 or more high-end graphics cards. But on the standard computer, you'd probably see a power supply about 550 watts or lower, because they just have very entry-level hardware. And just for an example, this is a high-end graphics card. This is a GTX 580 graphics card, and as you can see on the side there, there is one 8-pin connector and another 6-pin connector that it will need to have plugged in order to run properly. You would see on a newer graphics card probably one that probably takes 2 8-pin graphics card connectors, which really shows that you need to have a very high-end power supply in order to run a multitude of high-end graphics cards. And in the second part of this video, I will show you how a basic power supply is installed. So this is the inside of a desktop computer. Now in this case, the case was designed to have the power supply on the bottom. But depending on the case, whether it's an ATX, mini ATX, ITX, etc., the case position for the power supply can vary. It can be on the bottom, it can be on the top, and it can be other places as well. In the motherboard power socket is on the right side. You would normally see it on this part of the motherboard. And on the top left is the 8-pin CPU socket. And in order to install a power supply cable, it's very straightforward. All you have to do is match the clip side of the cable to the elevated side of the socket and install as so. And for the CPU power socket. And there you go. And if you wanted to install other power cables, such as the hard drive one and the CD drive one, it is as simple as just matching the right socket, so the SATA ones for these ones, for example. And that is how you install a basic power supply.